Hello, another episode of the PoliChat Podcast returns. And as usual, we're here to bring our people, some of our decision makers, some of our politicians, some of the people that have a stake in governance of our country. And today is not different because we have a man whose name has been written in the history of this country when it comes to our parliament. Because he has played a role in seeing that West Nile is put on a better map when it comes to matters to do with this country. Without any further ado, allow me to introduce the Honorable Atiku Bernard, a former member of Parliament representing Ayivu, and he's here to chat with us on a number of issues. And I'm quite sure that you are also very ready to hear from him on many issues that you may not have been certain about, or you might have heard from different people. You're most welcome, Honorable.
Thank you. Should I call you my son or
You
my
can
younger
really do
brother?
that.
I'm happy to be here
Yeah.
to, of course, chat with you about our nation, the state of our politics in this region,
Yeah.
and also nationally. So I think this is my first time, or it's the inaugural chat with
Yes.
you and our viewers out there. Happy to be on this platform.
All right, and we're happy to have you as well. Now, for the people who may be hearing you for the first time or may not have had an interface with you to know who you are, kindly tell us who Honorable Atiku Bernard is.
Atiku Bernard is a very simple man, a down-to-earth man. I originate from a small village called Oyavu at the border. I think it's the second last village towards the DRC and in a ward called Nyovra, former Dumi sub-county in Ayivu division, and also a resident of Arua city. Atiku Bernard is born to the late Yuma Ernest. Of course, he's late, but he was a teacher, a primary school teacher. And I was born in 1977. Those of you who know, that was towards the end of Idi Amin's regime.
Yeah.
And that tells you that my father also started teaching in the Idi Amin regime. And that was the time when he was still starting his family life. He taught in Kisua Primary School. And that was the time he married my mother, Etoru Rose. She's my only surviving parent now.
Okay.
And we were born in that Naguru hospital. The current China-Uganda Friendship Hospital.
Yes.
That's where I was born.
Okay.
But our home was opposite that hospital. That area which has been demolished,
Yeah.
where government staff used to reside. At that time, my father was residing in one of the flats. Now you can imagine those days,
Yeah.
the days of the dictator Idi Amin's regime. Civil servants had quarters, staff quarters. And this was for juniors, but they were flats.
Don't we have
So
that today?
I was born in a government flat.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that luxury of a junior civil servant came to an end when the Tanzanians invaded Uganda and toppled Amin's regime. From that time, of course, Kampala being the capital, you find every part of the country is centered there. So our father retreated with us and his small family. By that time, we were two.
Yes.
I have an elder sister. So the two of us and my mother and my father retreated back to West Nile. And through up to 1980, when eventually, of course, after toppling Amin, Obote II regime came in, and they tried to organize that in 1980 elections, which eventually gave ground for General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and his group to go to the bush after disputing the results. So 1980 got us in Arua, and I think it was within that time that my father continued with his career of teaching in Awindiri Primary School.
Yes.
And when we came back here, of course, we were also given a staff house, a junior quarter, in junior quarters,
The current
currently
junior
the current
quarters,
junior
yes.
quarter, yes, where Tuambe Sports
Club,
Health
yes.
Club was actually where our house was. And that's where we resided for some time, up to 1986, until that war was won. In between there, of course, there was also this chaos of the NRA, which briefly also took us to DRC.
Okay.
So we went to exile twice.
Wow.
We went to exile after returning from Kampala in 1979, and also again during the peak of the fighting between the Uganda army and should I call it Uganda army or the
NRA,
no, the
UNLA.
UNLA
Yes.
and NRI.
Yes.
We also had to go back to DRC for refuge, and then came back after the war. So 1987, 88, I was in a school called Aripezu Primary. And of course, that was the time the security situation was still unstable. And it was that time that our father also returned to Kampala.
Okay.
He went for upgrading. And after upgrading, he got to another school in Kampala City Council. That's Makerere Primary School, where I started teaching. And when the situation normalized, my mother collected us as the children, and we followed our father in Kampala. And by the time we reached Kampala, that was in 1990, we found our father had now been transferred to teach in Wandegea Muslim Primary School.
Yes.
So he enrolled us there. I started P3 from there and finished P7 in 1994. And from then, after PLE, I joined St. Joseph's College Ombachi in 1995 for Senior 1 and finished in 1998 O-Level.
Yeah.
And after O-Level, I joined Caltech Academy Makerere, where I did my A-Level. And that is in 1998 to 1999. No, it's 1999 to 2000. And then from 2001, I joined Makerere University and finished in 2004.
You studied, which course did you study?
I did development studies as my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, I had passed very well. My preference was to do law.
Okay.
But my father could not afford. I got a triple B, and that was after a struggle. I was one of those few students who had to be examined twice.
Why?
Caltech Academy was one of those schools that was suspected to have leaked examinations.
Okay.
But for my own, I knew I was up to the task because my results from Senior 5 up to A-Level were always good. But we were summoned to UNEB headquarters and re-examined. Eventually, from triple A, I was reduced to triple B. But I did not take that in bad faith. Maybe that was the path God prepared for me.
Yeah.
So I missed my aspiration for law and ended up with
You
development
could have got,
studies.
I think government
No,
scholarship?
private.
Private.
And at that time, it was, I think, just being introduced. We were actually the first lot that did development studies as a course in Makerere University. And as fate may have prepared for me, I found myself in a class or in a course class that I really wanted. It was in Department of History, but it had a lot to do with the current affairs, historical affairs, and the global view. Generally, something that, mentored leadership. If I remember very well, Andrew Mwenda was one of our lecturers.
Okay.
He made our class very vivid. I was one of those active members. At that time, I was given a name, Ruanyarare, by my classmates.
Why
Ruanyarare was one of those vocal UPC fellows.
What does it mean?
Ruanyarare was a UPC icon who ended up in prison in Luzira after some unfamiliar comments. But he was one of those staunch UPC fellows who actually eventually was released by President Yoweri Museveni after taking over power. May his soul rest in peace. In class, I was one of those who was, who challenged almost each and every presentation that was made, either by lecturers, and we had a good engagement. And eventually, I was one of the best students in the class of the Moment Studies of 2000 and 2004. That is my academic journey.
Yeah.
Of course, one will question how I ended up in leadership. In Ombachi, I was a food prefect. We used to call, I think up to now, they call them refractory prefects.
Refractory.
Refractory prefects, yes. Yeah. I was a assistant refractory prefect in 1997 to 98. Caltech Academy, I was in the same position. I had a lot to do with administering discipline on matters of food.
Okay.
That's the area where people sometimes have to be,
I remember
disciplined.
When I joined secondary, I made sure that I was a good friend.
Exactly.
With the prefect in charge of
exactly.
the kitchen. So
we enjoyed some benefits in holding those positions. We were always the first in the refractory. Before you supervise others, you have to satisfy yourself. So that. But that aside, I also participated in school club activities. In Ombachi, in my O-level, I belonged to the Young Christian Students Association, YCS. Right from senior 1 up to senior 4. And then in Caltech Academy, we were charter. They call them charter members. We are the charter members of Interact Club.
Yes.
The Interact Club is the junior club of Rotary Club. So I'm proud to have been one of the charter members, and we led through up to now. As I talk, we still have Interact Club of Caltech Academy. My career, I was in the leadership of the Development Animators Club, which club I think up to now is still there. From then, of course, if you are to package or fix my academic periods into the political events of this country, from 1986 to 1996, the NRA ruled this country as a military faction. It's not until the 1995 Constitution was promulgated to detail how the governance of this country would look different from other regimes. Of course, you are aware when the president took over or announced the takeover of government, he said this is not just a mere change, but a fundamental change. And one of the fundamental changes, actually, let me say, the backbone of the fundamental change was the promulgation of the Constitution of 1995, where the entire country was traversed. People participated in electing their delegates to go and write the Constitution. After the election of the delegates moved across the country with the Constitution Commission, to draft the constitution. And in 1996 is when the first general election under the NRA/NRM regime was held, but under the movement system. Now, 1996 was when I was still in senior 2 in St. Joseph's College, Ombachi. But in 2004, when I was finishing my university degree, before that, there was a referendum where those who are in multi-party politics before, UPC, DP, and others who wanted pluralism, what we call pluralism, multipartism, were dialoguing with the NRM to see that the political space is open, so that people move away from the movement system to multipartism, what in modern democracy is known as democracy. So a referendum was held in 2000, and the people of Uganda voted that the political space should be opened. Now, after opening the political space in 2004, when I was almost finishing my university degree, is when reform agenda came about. The likes of retired Kano Kiza Besigye and our senior politicians across the country, and also from West Nile. I tended to embrace the message from reform agenda and from the multi-party proponents. Now, that was the time when people were preparing for the 2006 general elections. And that was the point when FDC eventually was born. Of course, remember the 2001 elections, yes, general elections?
2001, yes.
Which were the last conduct of
I think that was the last time we had the elections under the movement
system, yes. Was in 2001. And that's the first time Dr. Kiza Besigye contested as a candidate, but under the flagship of reform agenda. Now, as students, we all aligned with the reform agenda and we remained there. So as the reform agenda evolved into FDC, we were part and parcel of that transition. So when FDC became a political party in 2004, in preparation for the 2006 general elections, I was already among the youth who are in the system aspiring for a political change in terms of governance and service delivery. So as the FDC was formed, and in 2005, when preparations were being made for the 2006 general elections, different leaders, of course, were positioning themselves. FDC was looking for candidates to contest on their ticket at all levels. And were among the students who showed up from West Nile
to show interest.
But
Honorable, before we get there, I wanted us to pick the foundation properly.
Yes.
As to how you had interest in the reform agenda that later on metamorphosed into FDC rather than the NRA/the NRM that was in power. Why did you pick interest in the reform agenda instead of the government of the day by then?
Now, there are a lot of things. First of all, for us as West Nilers, or let's say the Greater North, most of the regimes that have been in power tended to neglect our region. And that was not any different from the time NRA took over from 1986. Of course, I did mention to you my background as a child.
Yes.
We were chased from Kampala to Arua, from Arua to Congo as refugees. And even when we came back from the refugee situation, life wasn't as expected. I grew up comparing my childhood lifestyle under the Amin regime and what was happening in the NRA regime. And things changed drastically. I told you, my father, from residing in a free government house, from receiving posho, milk, beans, there were food rations which were being given to government civil servants. We used to enjoy those things as children of teachers. But under the NRA, those things were not there. They vanished immediately. The regime took over. When my father moved to Kampala, my expectation as a child, when our mother took us in 1990, was that we were going to be residing in a government facility or a government quarter.
And receive posho again.
Exactly.
And the
but we reached there, we found our father was renting a small house in Chikoni there and residing in it with the other people. So that was, should I call it 360 ton of events?
Yeah.
Automatically, it biased my mind as a child. And the struggle I went through, seeing my father struggling to look for school fees. He's a government staff, failing to afford school fees for his child in a school like Ombachi. And my mother having to struggle also to put together part of the school fees and other school requirements. Automatically, I wouldn't graduate from Makerere University as a private student more so. And yet we knew Makerere University was the highest institution of learning where all bright students of this country ended up and studying for free, because university education in those other regimes, bad regimes according to the NRA or NRM, offered higher education of learning for free.
The other day I was having a conversation with the Honorable Wadri Kasiano. He said during that time, you would not carry anything to the university.
So
find meals and everything.
Those were the stories we had in our childhood. But now, in living it in reality, that there's a government, but this government is saying children of civil servants, children who come from poor backgrounds should pay school fees, should pay for everything at that level. To me, was too much to accept. So my life in this short period of being a student automatically drifted me not to support the movement system. And of course, up to now, we still have to discuss and debate over these matters, because government is supposed to provide services. And these services are supposed to be for free, because the services that accrue from government are out of taxes being paid by citizens. So that's how I ended up in the reform agenda. And of course, you know that reform agenda had a breakaway faction of people from movement or NRM or NRA, people who had brought this government in power and disagreed with how things were going. Of course, you remember reform agenda came to be because, according to Dr. Besigye and the group, they had drifted away from the 10-point program. They were doing contrary to what had convinced them to go to the bush. So I wouldn't really, my conscience wouldn't allow me to go with an injustice that is being done in the country, that is being done to my region, that is being done to my social class of people. Because we would expect that a government should offer a platform for all citizens to be able to enjoy their full rights in a country they call their home.
Now, we all understand that after that you secured the seat to Parliament.
Not really. As I said, we went to Parliament and had a meeting with the late Honorable Aruma, Honorable Kasiano Wadri, Honorable Alex Onzima, and others. Of course, all of them, those I've mentioned, were already in Parliament. And actually, we used one of the committee rooms to have this meeting. I remember as amateurs, myself, Honorable Godi, Honorable Abia Christine, Fungaro, Asedri, Oyem, is it Oyemi or Ayemi? And some other people we met, and we were all given constituencies to identify to go and contest. Initially, my interest was to come and contest in Arua municipality. But we realized we were about 7 people who had shown interest to contest in Arua municipality.
All under the FDC.
Under the FDC. Tickets. So that meant we were supposed to be subjected to a primary. But when interrogating each of the candidates further, they realized, one, I came from Ayivu, where there was no FDC candidate. So automatically I was told to move to Ayivu, and leave the other 6 people to battle it in the primaries. Because Godi, Asedri, Oyemi, and others had shown interest in contesting in Arua municipality. And I think that primary eventually was done, and Godi emerged the winner. And when I came to Arua, I was not as old as I am in 2005. I was more younger than what I am. When on moving around, trying to get people's opinion about my candidature. And when I moved to FDC office, very few people knew me. And the FDC leaders in Ayivu, in our regional office here, of course, tried to interrogate me, interview me, to try to find out whether I was fit for that campaign, that contest.
That contest, yes.
They realized that, one, I was young. 2, my Lugbarati was not that perfect, as I told you. My story from childhood. I knew more Luganda than my local language.
Yes.
And they also realized I had very little clue about the politics of the day in Ayivu. So the advice was that no, the current political ground is already fully occupied by Honorable Bakoko. At that time, she was a minister, and Honorable Margaret Angufiru. So the advice was that if I'm really interested in being in politics, I should start from a lower level.
The councillor.
And that level was being a district councillor. So I said, but I'm not in a hurry. I've come to lead. And this leadership doesn't mean I should only be at Parliament. I can start from any position you instruct me to go to. Now, for these people, they're also trying to test the waters in the politics using the FDC in Ayivu. So when I accepted, they said, okay, now we are going to try you with a seasoned politician. That's Honorable Ayivu County, who at one time was the LC5 chairman of Arua district under the movement system.
Yes.
He was the NRM chairman of Arua district. When I say Arua district, I mean Madiokolo, Maracha, Terego, Yumbe, Koboko. All these were under Arua district. So this was an experienced politician, a well-grounded one, and he was the chairman NRM in I think Ayivu at that time. So I was given a very hard task, and I told them I'm up to the task. I'll deliver. So we, of course, went in, and I did go out to campaign as a FDC candidate for Adumi sub-county, won those elections. The stories behind the victory are very funny, but I can assure you the manner in which I packaged my message, the strategies I used to present the messages, caught the heart and soul of the people to the extent that in every rally, after every rally I addressed, people started mobilizing resources to support my next campaign. And some even started regretting why they'd never allowed me to contest with those of Bakoko and Margaret Angufiru, because they realized I was mature in my presentation and campaigning strategies. So, but it was not too late, of course, as time went. That vote of confidence was delivered in 2011.
Yes.
When I now, not that I wanted to be, this time it was people who demanded that I should go to Parliament and represent them. After seeing my effective leadership in Arua District Council, where I was the chairperson of Social Services Committee, after giving a run to the NRM candidates for the speakership.
Yes.
Of course, I was let down by the numbers. We had very few FDC councillors in that council. Otherwise, I'd caught the heart of the entire council. They really wanted to give me the position, but when they retreated to their caucus, they said, but now, if we elect this FDC to go and lead us in the council, in the first multi-party council, it will be, NRM will have yielded a very sumptuous position to the opposition. So, but I in my first presentation, I caught the eyes and the hearts of the entire council, where they said, no, we cannot leave this brilliant brain outside the management of the affairs of Arua district. Maybe we shall benefit from his leadership. And indeed, I delivered. It's in this council that I led the enactment of Arua District Education Ordinance, which up to now is in force. It became a center for learning by other local governments. I led to the enactment of Arua District Hygiene and Sanitation Ordinance, which up to date is active. And those were the grounds that prepared me to join the national politics. I already had some good references to point at as achievements, and people saw me with a different style of leadership in the communities.
Yes.
At my time, in the 5 years I was in the council, I was able to bring together civil society organizations, NGOs, to work with the local government. And that offered me a platform on all the media houses, be it print or radio. I was one of the favorites, always on air. So really, that's how I ended up in the national politics. The first time I made the attempt in 2011, I was elected, and I joined the 9th Parliament, where I also did not just end there.
Yeah.
That was my second attempt in politics under the FDC, and got elected. And FDC also appointed me as the Shadow Minister for Youth and Children Affairs, where I worked and delivered the Private Members Bill, which was also enacted into law, that led to the amendment to the Children's Act.
Yes.
You know, you can go on record and check how many opposition-led private members' bills have succeeded, and how the one of Atiku Bernard was able to succeed all the processes and procedures with minimal opposition. Instead, there was a collaboration to make it better. And
I understand government also had its own in its coffers.
Yes, you know, this was a bill that had been presented in 2004 by the line minister of Youth and Children Affairs, the Honorable Felix Okoto Gong.
Yes.
But when he presented it, it was shelved. From that time, 2004 to 2014,
yes.
Actually, a period of 10 years, the bill was shelved. But when I dug it out and presented it on the floor of Parliament with the very clear justifications, it was difficult for anybody to not to support. Even Honorable Felix Okoto Ogong was one of those who seconded my motion requesting Parliament to grant me leave to go and prepare this bill. So we worked with the former ministers who were in that line and made this amendment. And when it was presented, of course, when I presented it on the floor of Parliament, the line minister came with they went and brought out from the shelf with all the dust that bill which Okoto Ogong had presented.
Yes.
And when the two bills, actually, Right Honorable Kadaga allowed us to present both bills. And when we presented both bills, they were sent to the Committee of Gender to go and scrutinize and compare the two. They found mine carried more weight and said, but the one of government really has remained defunct. So they put it aside and eventually mine carried the day. It was passed, sent to the president, and the president assented to it in 2016. And it was recently amended when the government was rationalizing, because we had created an authority, the Children's Authority, in that. So when government was rationalizing to shrink these authorities back into the ministry, they amended that section which created the authority. But by and large, we were able to secure the lives of our children who are in needy situations. For instance, children who are taken out of the country for adoption. We had, by the time we were enacting this amendment, Uganda was leading, second country after Ethiopia, leading all over the world in terms of exporting children. We had a situation where one activist commented that you can come into Uganda and live with a child as a gift. You can imagine children being taken out of the country without any checks and balances. So my amendment of the Children's Act led to those, closing those gaps to ensure that our children's lives are secured. That was my first stint in national politics. Of course, as I said, I also in FDC, I was in the leadership. I was the Secretary for Foreign Affairs. Anything to do with relating with the different parts of the world, I was in charge for about FDC. 7 years.
Okay.
And I did that work diligently. And before I left FDC, I'd really given my support 100%.
You had done well.
Yeah.
So when someone tracks your record, going back to the reform agenda and then the FDC, they will realize that you are an active member actually of the reform agenda and also the FDC. With the positions you took in the party itself and also in Parliament, the work you did, you were really representing the FDC with a lot of love. Yeah. And but later on, you eventually left FDC and contested as an independent.
Correct.
An NRM leaning independent, in other words, after which eventually crossed over to the National Resistance Movement.
Yes.
With the how your love for reform agenda started, someone would find it very hard that you would actually leave FDC and try to resolve your issues. And when you left, there are a lot of issues that actually came up. One of them, you were quoted by a journalist saying it was the founder syndrome that led you to leave the FDC. Yeah. Others said you were accused of being a mole in the party. Actually, you said that when you had a press conference at the golf course.
Yeah.
Then there was an issue of you saying that you want to strategically position yourself in case there's a change of government, you will be able to make an easier choice. So, of all these allegations and some of the things you actually said, what really led you to leave the FDC?
It's not about fear, or I think I would say betrayal. When you are convinced that you are living with the comrades. And the comrades go behind you and stab you from the back and then label you to be a mole. I think any normal human being will be disappointed. And that's exactly what happened. And the origin of my accusations were because of my vigilance and also affinity to deliver services. You know, when you're elected as a member of parliament, you are now a national leader.
Yep.
Your roles change. But of course, as I had explained earlier, I as FDC member, card holder, and leader in the party, and at the same time also as a member of parliament on FDC ticket, representing the people of Ayivu in the National Assembly, I had, should I call it, it's something that all politicians actually need to understand, that you have some areas where your roles will clash,
Yes.
or they will conflict. On one side, as a political activist or leader, you're expected to oppose each and everything. But once you have taken oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, which the ruling party also uses to lead and deliver services, you will always have a problem there. And that's something that all politicians need to, who are participating in active politics, need to understand. And also our political supporters in the party need to understand that once you have members of parliament, at one point you'll find them seated together with NRM on the same table, either eating or discussing or what. You'll find them in that state. Now, if a political activist came here and found us seated together, they'll say, I found that he seated with NRM fellows taking tea together.
Yeah.
Now, those are the cheap minds that ended up beginning to label me as a mole. Now, I should bring this out. And this was particularly at the time when government was beginning to implement the National Development Plan 2 and 3. Actually, yeah, it was National Development Plan 2 and 3. Now, when you look at the National Development Plan 2, the National Development Plan is actually a framework that guides the development of the country or our country every 5 years after every election, general election. There's a framework that governs the country in terms of service delivery. And this National Development Plan is also originates from Vision 2040, which was also promulgated from 2003 to guide this country in the next 40 years, how the development in this country will take place. Now, it was out of the National Development Plan 2 that I picked out something that was going to significantly change service delivery and governance in our region, and particularly the issue of Arua City. In National Development Plan 2, it had been earmarked that the government was going to establish regional cities. And these were 5 of them. Mbarara, Arua, Gulu, Mbale, and...
Was Hoima part of it?
No, Hoima wasn't part of it. There were 4 regional cities. Mbarara for Western, Arua for West Nile, Gulu for Northern, and then Mbale for Eastern. So eventually, Jinja came on board as a strategic city for the historical background it holds because of being an industrial hub. So Jinja was brought on board as a strategic city, and then eventually also Hoima was brought as a tourism city Then Nakasongola was also brought on board.
I think Hoima was brought for the oil, and then the
It's Fort Poto. Fort Poto, yeah, for tourism. Then Hoima eventually as a oil city. Then other, of course, as the NDP2 was being actualized, these adjustments came on board, and we are, as leaders, we were fully involved in these discussions. First and foremost, as a leader of a constituency that was going to be directly impacted by this pronouncement of Arua City, I had to keenly follow how this was going to evolve and affect my people. So I took keen interest to work with government to be able to understand the nitty-gritty, whether this city will adversely affect my people or it will benefit them. So in these discussions, I'm happy to say that we had a good MP in Honorable Aridru. At that time, he was also a committee chair. So I worked with him, and eventually when he got appointed as a Minister of State for Finance and General Duties, that's the time now we started working together to deliver. It's like being midwives in delivering what is called Arua City, because this was an idea hatched by government, but the leaders on the ground had to come on board to see that this city is delivered on ample ground, on a ground where our people will be receptive to it. I'd had a history about the animosity, about the expansion of the boundaries of Arua municipality into Ayivu. When I was in Ombachi, I think it was in 1997, should be, yes, I think 1997, when there was a battle here between the municipal dwellers and the people of Ayivu, where eventually the people of Ayivu declared that Ayivu Gasi, meaning the people of Ayivu don't want any expansion of the boundaries of Arua municipality into Ayivu. They also had contestations about establishment of markets. I think there were battles to do with the tendering process of Arua main market, which eventually, of course, unfolded into an ugly fight.
Yeah, true.
Now, I had all those in my mind. And I consulted our elders, people like late Dikinyai, because the issue of Ayivu gas was very prominent when he was a member of parliament representing the people of Ayivu in the parliament. That was 1996 to 2001. So I had to consult him and find out what were the, unfinished issues that led the people of Ayivu to say Ayivu gas. Because at that time, I think Honorable Jenny was the Minister of State for Local Government or something. And when they came to Arua and wanting to expand the boundary, Arua municipality was the smallest of all municipalities in this country. So I asked him why the people of Ayivu never wanted the expansion, like it has now happened. As I left the position of member of parliament, a group came up calling themselves Save Ayivu Initiative, bringing back those issues of Ayivu gas, which at my time we were able to dialogue about and sensitize people that actually the coming of the city is for our own good rather than bad. So we should embrace it. So when I got that background from Honorable Dikinyai and told him, urban sprawl is real. You cannot stop urbanization from taking place. Look at Ediofe now. Look at Onduparaka now. Look at Onjivu. Look at Mvara. Look at Airfield. The places which you initially saying Ayivu gas is already being eaten into by urbanization. People are developing. People are buying land. So we cannot stop this. The only best option for us is to accept the city status, but let us maintain Ayivu County as Ayivu County and create additional divisions in it so that services can be delivered to the people, can be taken closer to the people. But these divisions will be at the level of a municipality in itself. So that was the point where my colleagues, members of parliament from the region, started putting question marks on me and saying, Atiku, these days moves the Honorable Aredru. They are seen in the State House. And indeed, we used to frequent the State House because all these things, they need high-level lobbying. And we did this high-level lobbying at State House. At one time, we followed the president in Fort Portal when he was doing a tour in Rwenzori. And all this, and indeed, the creation of Arua City has not been on silver plate. There was a lot of misunderstanding. At one point, even people started accusing Atiku Bernard and the Honorable Aredru for hatching a plan to chase out non-Ayivus, which history is going to prove and time is going to prove them wrong. Because we knew what we were up to. One, I had to contain.
On the flip side, actually, people say you and colleagues sold Ayivu.
Exactly, that's the accusation. But as time goes, they are going to realize that actually, Atiku brought them gold. Atiku brought for them an elephant meat, which they should have sharpened their knives to start cutting their shares for. So we eventually, when we brought this, as things, of course, evolved, there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of misinformation going on. Because at the formative stage, we presented to government how we wanted Arua City to be. We presented, of course, when we presented, government said, let's merge Ayivu and Arua municipality, because Arua municipality, having been the smallest, would not form a city. Because the population then was around 56,000. But Ayivu had 224,000 people. So when you add these two, they would give you something close to 300,000 people, which was the minimum population for creating a city. So we had to find ways of putting these two entities together. And in my assumption, this would have done away with the people looking at themselves with the either tribal or clan lenses. I imagined that if Ayivu was put together with the Arua municipality and split in equal measure to form different divisions, there will be nothing like Ayivus looking at themselves as Ayivus, or another community looking at themselves as a disenfranchised community, or a community that is, being isolated. We would be looking at ourselves as people of Arua City. That was what was in my mind. But of course, I will not also come out clearly. Today, I'm saying this because as time goes, history is going to absolve me that Atiku actually meant that the people who come to stay in Arua City should be one people, looking at themselves as a people not based on tribe, color, or political allegiance. And as we talk today, in Ayivu, you find the Kakwas, you find the Congolese, you find the Baganda, you find Sudanese. You go to Idiofe, you'll see. Go to Onduparaka, go to even as far as Odamachaku, we have Rwandese who have bought land there, who are doing business there. This morning I saw a truck coming with the goods, with the Rwandese number plate. And this truck is coming to do business on Monday. They're coming to prepare to sell on Monday. So the city being an international market center offers those opportunities. So my thought, which of course ended up being used against me politically, was that let's have a homogeneous Arua City. Of course, we know the majority population in Arua City is comprised of the Ayivu.
Yes.
They should be the ones to welcome the rest of the world that is going to be coming here. They should be able to offer land for development and investments to take place here. They should be able to offer even security for the people who come. And they will be the biggest beneficiaries economically, in terms of business, in terms of having money our people already were historically blessed in terms of doing business. So the elevation of the city of Arua district to a city status, or Ayivu and Arua municipality to a city status, in itself is strengthening that position of doing business, of being in commerce with the rest of Uganda and the world. So that is where I got my disappointment with FDC, on that basis of working with the government to deliver Arua City. So eventually, when I saw the animosity was too bad, I opted not to go direct into NRM, but I opted to work with NRM, where I already knew there were benefits for my people, and we delivered the city. And I decided to go independent. And towards the end of my second term is when eventually the city was delivered. And when the city was delivered, unfortunately, the propaganda against me had reached far,
The peak.
you know, and that's how I lost the elections. But I also didn't lose on uneven ground. As I said, I had my personal weaknesses, I must admit, but it also unfavorable grounds. You saw the entire country, almost actually, let's say the entire West Nile. I think the only two FDCs who survived, Honorable Guzu and the Honorable Emmanuel from Pakwach, Jonam. Those are the only two opposition MPs who survived in West Nile. So there was a clandestine move to ensure that NRM is the majority winner across the region, and I think that's how eventually I lost out. But by and large, my move to NRM was also after assessing the political trend in the country. We have all seen what has happened to FDC, my beloved party, which has what you earlier on mentioned, the attachment of the founder members, not wanting to allow others to take leadership of the party, has eventually broken down the party.
So you're not surprised that actually FDC
Exactly, because I saw it first. Those who called me names, I remember calling Honorable Ingrid, and asked her, you called me a mole. Now, who are the moles? Mugisha Muntu mentioned at certain point and said, as time goes, they are going to be seen.
It became a big issue actually during the previous campaigns in 2020. There was, I think, huge chunks of money that the party president and secretary general were using for campaigns, and members were asking, where is this money
coming from? So eventually, FDC ended up being broken into three. ANT went with the first bit of it, where Honorable Kasiano and Abia went. Then we have FDC Katonga, FDC Najana Nkumbi. So you can see that where things have reached now, I wouldn't have, where would I belong in these three camps? Now we have NRM, which when you see is well entrenched. And I think the only thing a wise person will do is to align with them, even if you don't agree with them 100%. It's so good to align with them and move in and disagree from there. Maybe it will be good for me to express my dissatisfaction with the system from within the party. And that was the one of the convictions with which I went to NRM. And I intend to contest still in the NRM primaries to seek the flag, because I believe I have better capacity to advocate for my constituency and my region from within the NRM setting until such a time when maybe the tables turn.
But I wanted us to look at two more things before we wind this up.
Yes.
One is that you are the chairperson for the City Land Board. When the city status actually came through,
Yes.
Arua district, the mother district, had to move separate.
Yes.
And leave the city. But then a lot of people had actually applied for land titles. I think over 60,000 or 600,000 people.
There are about 6,000 files.
6,000 files. And these files were actually the registration process that started under Arua district.
Yes.
But then the city came in, and some of the areas that were under the district have been absorbed by the city. So there has been that huge wrangle, and I wanted you to just give people an update of how far this has gone.
Yes, as I said, the formation of Arua City has come with a lot of changes. And some of these changes are structural, they are administrative, they are going to be legal changes. As we talk up to now, Parliament has not yet enacted a law to cater for these regional cities that have been created. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have Kampala Capital City Authority Act. There's a law that governs KCCA. And we have also a law for local governments, the district local governments, but we don't have yet a law for regional cities. Now, at legal level, there's still that lacuna. When you come to the administrative structure, of course, Arua district now has its own leadership, from LC5 chairman up to the cow and the councillors and what have you. And the political jurisdiction is well defined. Arua district is now what is Vura County.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Arua city is comprised of Arua municipality, former Arua municipality, now Arua Central, and former Ayivu County, now Ayivu division, with the two constituencies of Ayivu East and Ayivu West. Now, under these structures, administrative structures, all levels, we have service delivery structures, statutory bodies, where Arua district must have its own land board, and Arua city must have its own land board, because these are now two different local governments. Now, before the pronouncement of the city status, I led a campaign to mobilize people, particularly those in Ayivu, because land in Ayivu is still owned traditionally. I wouldn't even call it customarily, because when you have customary ownership, you have a certificate to that effect. Our people are still owning land as per the time God created land. They have never owned land legally. So we led a campaign to tell our people that now that we are moving to the direction of a city, it is important and prudent for you to know the exact size of your land. It's important for you to know the boundary of your land. And it's important to have legal ownership, because you never know what will, what may happen in terms of the legality of ownership of land. Much as the Constitution in Article 237 says land belongs to the people. Now, that's the pronouncement, the constitutional pronouncement. But it also goes ahead.
The law clearly states how land ownership.
How you should own land.
Yes.
And Parliament went ahead and enacted a law, the Land Act, to guide people to own land. Now, if you have not used these legal frameworks to own land, how will you claim ownership of land? Because land in a city status is very precious. It's like gold. There's no virgin land in a city. That's why people encroach up to the wetland. People build up to the top of hills and mountains, because land is the most lucrative or most valuable asset in a city setting. So I had thought I would mobilize my people to embrace land registration so that they can have legal ownership to protect them from scavengers. So this campaign eventually led people to embrace the idea, and many applied. So by the time of pronouncing the city status, these files had not been processed. So these files had been held by Arua district for the last 3 years. But last year, after a protracted dialogue, I wouldn't want to call it a fight. After a protracted dialogue, Arua district leadership was able to surrender these files back to us. and we received about 4,700 files. And my board has since approved about 2,000 files. We're left with about 2,000 something to finish.
When do you think the remaining files will be?
Before this year ends, we'll have cleared all of them.
Okay.
But I would also like to encourage people. After that wave, people went into limbo. They have gone back to their comfort zone, but the demand for land has increased. Land wrangles have also increased. Now, that goes back. I want to appeal to the people out there, especially those in Ayivu, that please register your land. Let nobody deceive you. The city has not come to grab your land. But it will be better for you to first have ownership of this land legally so that you can deal with whoever wants to use your land. Even government, when government wants to use your land, they use legal means.
Yes.
But you can only bargain with the government at par if you have a legal ownership of that land that you claim to be yours. It is the only way you can leave your children in certainty that they have land. But if you die without securing the legal status of this land, anybody can take advantage of your children. Some of us die leaving our children when they're still young. If you die and left your children when they're still in primary, your relatives can take advantage of your children. But if you die when you have left your land registered, your children will be able to claim ownership of what belongs to you. So I want to encourage our people to continue with this process of land registration because in the city, people are scampering for land. They will take advantage of you, particularly those of you who are not educated or who have low levels of income. But I always say, once you have land in a city, you are not poor. Because anytime somebody can come and say, I want to buy your land for 1 billion shillings, and yet you have never held 100,000 shillings, automatically that 1 billion will disorganize you. And we have seen it. When we did the compensation for to acquire additional land for Arua International Airfield, International Airport, people were given money they had never seen. Some people thought they will enjoy that money until they die. But within months, 50 million was already blown. Somebody left his ancestral... Of course, the ancestral land was already taken by the airport. He went and, instead of buying land, went and rented in the water, even abandoned the first wife and got a Quaker. In a period of 3 to 5 months, the 50 million was already finished. So we need a lot of capacity building, a lot of sensitization for our people who are now in a city, particularly on matters of land.
Well, I know I already said, you already pointed out that you'd be contesting, but someone would ask, where are you contesting? And secondly, you were in Parliament for 10 years. Why would someone really think that, or why would someone give you the mandate to go back to Parliament?
Yeah, as said, I already announced my candidature, and I've said before, I still feel our region is underrepresented. Our city needs experienced leadership. For obvious reasons, as I said, we have laws enacted by Parliament for the Kampala Capital City Authority. We have a law called the Local Government Act, where cities are only mentioned. And at the time of enacting the Local Government Act, the city that we were talking about was Kampala City Council. Now we have 15 cities. These 15 cities have some unique features in terms of resource requirement, in terms of physical requirement, in terms of, various capacities. Now, that requires a law of its own. Now, that is the element where I feel I still have a contribution to make in the August House. I'm happy these 5 years are elapsing before that law is tabled. I've been actually working closely with the Honorable Raphael Magezi, who is the current minister of Ministry of Local Government. And it was at his leadership time, while chairing the Committee of Local Government and Public Service, when the first bill or motion was tabled for creating cities. And it was in his regime that the cities motion was brought on the floor of Parliament. And he's still there as the minister. So I feel if the people of Ayivu West voted for me, I'll be a good leader in ensuring that the enactment of the regional cities law is tabled before Parliament. If government doesn't bring it, I'll bring a private member's bill.
So
to cater for the interests of cities, regional cities, so that services can be delivered. So that there are some issues, which require legal protection for our people. As I said, there are unique features. For instance, land ownership. A lot of the land in Ayivu is not yet registered. We need government to come in to ensure that people get land registration certificates. We need to streamline the physical development plan. Arua City now has a master plan, a physical development plan. But for that physical development plan to be implemented to the letter, it requires a lot of resources. Now, local government or the cities cannot raise those resources. We'll have to advocate for those resources to be provided for by the central government. So I feel I am a better candidate, having had that background. And as I said, in the 9th Parliament, I was able to present a private member's bill, which was passed. In the 10th Parliament, I presented a second private member's bill to do with the prevention and prohibition of human sacrifice. You all know that in our country, now that we're approaching political season, there's a lot of human sacrifice going to take place. I brought that law. It was enacted and assented to by the president. So in terms of my performance, but before I left the 10th Parliament, I was among the top 10 legislators in this country. So why would somebody not send back a person of my capacity to lead or to be their representative in the August House? Last but not least,
that you will also present your last message to the people of Ayivu West.
Yes, there was the second part of your question haven't I answered both of them?
I think you've answered both of them.
Yes, I think I've answered both of them. And Arua City needs vibrant leadership. And legislation or the National Assembly is not like the presidency, which enjoys a lot of powers. Actually, the more experience, the more longevity in the August House, the better. Because that house, only one person can represent you. And if you have got the opportunity to have somebody who is vibrant, who is knowledgeable, who is experienced, you are better off keeping that person there than bringing an amateur. I think the people of Ayivu have tried it. They sent somebody who was an amateur. In the 5 years, he is not seen on the floor of Parliament. He has not advocated for anything. He has not brought development. So we have instead lost as Ayivu West and Arua City. So I think I have very fertile ground to ask for the vote of the people of Ayivu West so that I can go back and represent them and advocate for them. And we develop our city to be an enviable city for the world.
So thank you so much once again for making time. And also our viewers, thank you so much for watching the PoliChat Podcast. As always, we shall be back here next Wednesday to give you another dose of something that you probably didn't know about. Thank you so much.